Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to our Seacology Prize Ceremony. By my count, Ken, I think this is Seacology Prize winner number 23. Is that right? Did I get that right? Yeah. Thank you. My name's Paul Cox, and I serve as the chairman of the Seacology Foundation. I'm so grateful you came tonight to show respect for a wonderful individual who's worked so hard at much peril to protect his island environment. A few words about how Seacology started. My wife Barbara and I and our four children were living in a little small village in a very remote island in Samoa. We first got there, we were in a thatched hut without running water or electricity. All we had was my research gear and the children's textbooks. The beautiful white beach in front, and a fantastic rainforest behind. I asked Barbara when we first got there, I said, "Don't you think we could live here forever?" She said, "1 year, Paul." But at the end of the year, she didn't want to leave. We fell in love with the people. There was always time in their culture for them to bring by some fish or bananas, to talk, to share stories, and it really was like a piece of heaven on earth. And then the loggers showed up. And these aren't guys like Paul Bunyan singing little songs. They show up with gigantic earth-moving equipment, chains just knocking down the forest. The people were crying. I went to the chiefs. "Why are you allowing them to log this forest?" They explained that the government required them to build a school. They had no money because they're subsistence farmers and reef foragers. And somehow, miraculously, the logging company, for their 30,000-acre lowland forest, had offered them the princely sum of $85,000, the exact amount to build the school. So I asked, well, what if I could build a school for you? Could you stop? They sent two very brave chiefs with their machetes, chased these guys away, including Fuyona Sunio, amazing guy. I came back to Barb with good news and bad news. Good news, we'd saved a 30,000-acre rainforest. Bad news, I had 6 weeks to get $85,000 cash, which meant that we'd have to sell our house, our car, and perhaps one of our 4 children. And you know at a moment like that if your marriage is working, because Barbara took my hand. She said, "What a great opportunity, Paul. How often we get to do a chance to do something like this? Let's go for it." Barbara, where are you? Can you stand? She's there. Stand up, Barbara. Yeah. I got back and I thought, wow, what can I do to raise this $85,000? We probably can't. I learned the concept of an illiquid investment, and a friend said, "Why don't you go talk to Ken Murdoch? He's a great friend of the islands." This is the first time I'd met Ken. I went in to see Ken. He said, "Well, what would you like to talk about?" I said, "Well, I really don't care what we talk about as long as I leave here with a check that'll get me towards that $85,000. His lawyer was there. Ken said, "I don't often hear proposals like that. I want to hear more," he said. So that's what brought Ken, who serves as my co-chairman with me and former president of the and co-founder of the Seacology Institute. And you know, when we went back, the villagers walked with me to the logging company, 600 people. They told the loggers, never set foot again in our forest. Ken Murdoch and another close friend of ours, Rex Mon, who played a significant role, the 3 of us carried kava roots in, sat in a hut, heard the chiefs talk. They brought this gigantic pig. Ken said, "What am I going to do with that?" I said, "That's your carry-on, Ken." But I don't know, that night is so vivid in my memory, probably in yours too, Ken. And we drove back, and I know this sounds a little silly, but we drove back to the forest, we stopped, it was dark, and we sang Happy Birthday. And that forest still stands. So this idea just went like wildfire, that there's these crazy guys making deals. They're building schools, they're building hospitals, they're building water supplies in return for you saving your reef or forest. Soon we incorporated, really as a way just of shouldering our own gifts and our own funds. And then something wonderful happened. The head of the Goldman Environmental Fund decided to come help us out, and that's Dwayne Silverstein. You know, this is a great organization. We've had 22 of these indigenous people on islands around the world who've risked their lives to protect their culture and environment. And so far, This little organization has built over 250 schools, hospitals, clinics, in return for setting aside over 1.5 million acres of rainforest and reef. It's such a privilege for me to introduce to you our executive director who's taken this organization into orbit. Please join me in welcoming Dwayne Silverstein.
Let me add my welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And como usual, bienvenidos especial a mis amigos aquí que hablan español, incluyendo la novia o la amiga de Ken Murdoch.
Buena suerte.
Buena suerte. Also, as usual, I will just do a little review or kind of report to the public here of what we have done in the last year. Of course, time only permits us to do just a very, very small overview, but you'll get the idea that we are quite busy at Seacology. And so let's go with some of the updates right now. And to date, Seacology, as Paul has said, has launched 243 projects in 53 countries around the world, saving well over 1 million acres of terrestrial and marine habitat. And let's just show you some examples from the last year. This is Caraco de Velez in Quinchoa Island in Chile. This is the resting ground of the Hudsonian goodwin, which is a bird that comes from all the way north of Alaska all the way down to the island there, one of the world's longest migrations. And there we approached the village and said, what do you need? What would you like to give some protection to these birds while they're here? And they said two things. We would like kiosks so the women can sell their crafts to tourists. And secondly, we would like a center to promote the tourism and so we can give lectures about what's happening here. And that's exactly what we provided. And here is a picture of the kiosks and a picture of the center. And of course, this rather large bird that maybe has eaten too much. And this is during a visit that many of you in this room have joined me in this visit. And it's easy to understand that the bird ate too much because potatoes are a really big treat there. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, or the others who are with me, but I think they eat 15 species of potatoes, and they cook them, and they made them in paste and put them on a spindle about 15 feet long, well, about 12 feet long, and roast it, and then put all kinds of food there. So that's why the bird is undoubtedly so heavy. But wherever we go in islands, they give us a traditional celebration, and there it was singing and dancing. And for those who know Chilean culture, poetry is very big, so they recited poems, of course, in Spanish, and it was great. Then they asked me to make a speech in this center you see on the lower left there. And this was my first ever speech that I made in Spanish with a translator, a local English teacher at the school, translating my words back into English for our guests. So it turns out that this translator had a good sense of humor. So as I'm winding up on my speech, I hear her translate my words saying, and this is the most beautiful and the most handsome audience I've ever seen in my life. And my initial reaction was, hey, I didn't say that. And then you see all their faces crestfallen. So I said, no, you are beautiful, you are wonderful and all that. But of course, as we know, it was a lie. That is not the most beautiful and handsome audience I've ever spoken with. This is. And here is a picture of the actual bird. But I want to talk two more things quickly about this project. One, I want you to consider the sacrifice they've made. This is their only beach. Their only beach. It's just adjacent to the town. They have agreed to give up the beach while the birds are there. That's what we mean by a reserve. This is a real quality of life sacrifice on their part. And the other thing I want to say about it is most of our projects, the overwhelming majority, are great successes. Once in a while, we hit more than a grand slam, and this is one because not only is the project working with the reserve and the sales kiosks, but is breathed a whole new life of the importance of this bird species into the villagers. It's, it's a number one topic. It's now leading their tourism brochures and all that, so a win-win-win in every sense of the word. Now we're going to Fiji on Vanuatu Island, and here we provided a kindergarten because that's what they asked and they wanted in exchange for the planting and protection of a 4,000-acre mangrove forest. And there is the kids on the upper right planting the mangrove trees, and the school and the little restroom block being constructed, and it is finished now and it is functioning. So just a very easy to understand example of what Paul and Ken founded is a win-win project here, benefits conservation and the villagers. This one's near and dear to me. This is in French Polynesia. About 4 years ago, Seacology provided a funding for a project called the Atatia Center, which is a native-style built building used to train the local people, kids and the adults, in the importance of a marine reserve around the beautiful, beautiful island of Moorea, and also in other traditional customs that are being lost. With me on the trip when we opened that project was Kimo Campbell, a beloved board member of Seacology, who 2 years ago passed away. And we wanted to do something in his honor. And he had told me at the time that this was his favorite project of all the projects. Well, this project was so successful that they had a problem. There wasn't enough room to house all the kids from the outer islands of French Polynesia to come to the center. So they desperately needed a dormitory. So we provided the funding to build that dormitory in memory of Kimo, and it's now called Fare, which is the French Polynesian word for a house, Kimo. And we had a wonderful opening there. Paul spoke in Polynesian, and we had food and dancing and the whole works, and you can really get a sense this is indeed one of the most beautiful islands in the world. Moving now to Honduras, some of you may have heard of Roatan Island. It's famous for scuba diving, and you can see it's pretty and it's got some very good diving, but there's a big problem there. The benefits of all this diving economy do not accrue to the local people. Honduras is an extraordinarily poor country, probably the second poorest in the Western Hemisphere. And if the local people are not bought into this, the Marine Reserve is not going to last in the long term. I mean, it's already been there many years, but the local people should and indeed need to have some of the benefits of what's happening there. So what they asked us for was a junior park ranger program so the young people could be trained in scuba diving, amongst other things. Almost none of the locals know that, so they can get jobs as rangers and things of that nature, and that's indeed what's happening right now. On the right, you see some staghorn coral. That Roatan has probably the biggest collection of staghorn and elkhorn coral of any site in the Caribbean. Okay, now we're in India, in the Sundarbans, which is the world's largest mangrove forest. And shortly after the ceremony last year, I went with two board members, Peter Reed, who's here tonight, and Barbara Meyer, and we visited this project. And here we provided the funding for a mobile environmental education center on a boat in exchange for planting some more mangroves and keeping them preserved. These projects are not static in Seacology. We're always listening and getting feedback. Originally, the project started as a building. It was envisioned as a building in one of the hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of islands in the Sundarbans. And then we realized, and we told by the local people, that they're so poor there, they don't really even have their own boats necessarily that would go far enough. And so it's not going to really work unless we bring the education to the local people, most of whom have kids have dropped out of school after 6th grade. So they're just thirsting for any kind of education. So there we are with the boat, and it's being remodeled, and we were there for the official opening, and they put on a Hindu traditional play for us, and then you could see on the top left, they painted the boat to look like a tiger, because this is one of the centers of man-eating tigers in the world. And I must give a shout out to Barbara and to Peter Reed, who were with me, because they were so moved, they funded the entirety of this project. So let's hear it for both of them. Thank you, Peter. Okay, now we're going to Indonesia on Sumba Island, Hupumada village, and there we provided at their request solar energy in exchange for protection of a 14,800 acre forest. And this is very important because there are some obvious beneficiaries of the solar energy, the kids so they could do their homework at night and all that. But one thing we've found out through our 240 plus projects, that if you that almost always the poorest of the poor people in island villages are women. And conversely, we found out if you want a project to move efficiently, quickly, and successfully, have the women of the village do it. So we launched an initiative involving several projects, this being one of them, to provide a trade-off for for conservation benefit, while at the same time improving the livelihoods of women of the village. And this project is working perfectly. The solar energy systems are working. The women can now, make their crafts at night, whereas before they could not do that. And 15,000 acres of rainforest are being saved. Madagascar, the home to more endemic species. That's species found nowhere else in the world than any other island in the world. And what they wanted was 3 primary schools and a footbridge in exchange for protecting almost 5,000 acres of rainforest. Footbridges turn out to be a surprisingly popular request because when you look at that little tranquil river underneath the footbridge, when it's rainy season, they can't cross. And when you can't cross often, that means a 3 or 4 hour walk all the way around till the river ends to get to the other side. So this is what we provided for them, and it's the 3 schools are built, the pathway is built, and the reserve is being respected, which is very important because it's like the Wild West in Madagascar right now. People are coming in and plundering that forest, and the lemurs and other species are very, very endangered there. Okay, moving to the Philippines. Here we constructed a long boardwalk for both the locals' enjoyment and for ecotourism purposes in support for the protection of 140 acres of mangrove forest. And then, unfortunately, as happens in the Philippines, they were hit twice, once with a 7.2 earthquake and then the biggest typhoon the world has experienced in many years, Typhoon Haiyan. And so Seacology always stands by our projects. We provided the extra funding so they can go and repair the damage caused by these natural disasters. And then they had another opening, and the project is up and running very well. Okay, again on the Philippines, in Palawan Island, we provided mooring buoys in support of 2,200 acres of marine reserve. Why are mooring buoys important? Because without them, the dive boats come and throw their anchors overboard, and the anchors land on the coral reef, and because of the currents, the anchors take out a tremendous swath of coral reef, just kill them. When you have mooring buoys, you could just tie up your boat to the mooring buoys. And as with all of our projects, volunteers ended up putting the buoys in, and there are now 77 such buoys in 21 sites, so that is working very well as well. Okay, just going up to one of the things we do at Seacology is we take people on trips to see our projects, and if it's a diving trip, to go diving, or if it's a land-based trip, to see some of the most beautiful sites that are nearby. So just to tell you about 2 upcoming trips. This is to Australia, our first trip ever to the Great Barrier Reef to swim with minke whales, which is only a 6-week window of opportunity to do this each year, and also to go diving. And this is the only bad news I have to convey tonight, that since we made this PowerPoint last week, this trip is sold out, but there's always a wait list. But on the other hand, we have a trip to Kenya coming up July 24th to August 2nd. And it'll start off visiting the Great Migration. You've probably all seen movies of that on nature shows or whatever. This is 1 million wildebeests and zebras and other animals crossing a river where the crocodiles hang out to pick them off and all that. So it's going to be a fantastic safari. And then we're going to be staying at some very interesting places, including the lodge where Prince William proposed to Kate. So I'm assuming it's not a Motel 6, but You never know. The royal family's a little hard up these days. And then, the biggest treat of all, we end the trip on the coast, on islands off the coast, where we will be visiting the work of tonight's Seacology Prize winners. So often we get requests, can't we see these people? They're so inspiring. Can't we go see their work? Yes, you can. There's brochures outside, so join me there. But you must act now. Okay, and yeah, right, and that's not all. And before we move on, just one or two announcements here. We are spinning off another 20 projects a year in addition to our 240, and all that is made possible by a wonderful but very small staff of 7 people who are here tonight, so I'd ask them to please stand and be acknowledged. Thank you for your great work. As of February, they will be joined by another person who's here, Mary Randolph. So Mary, we welcome you February to our staff. And before I introduce you to our host, one last announcement. We have 2 intrepid volunteers who do anything and everything we ask, from soup to nuts. They've really helped us a lot, and I'd like to acknowledge them. That's Janice Wenning and Terry Hirsch, so if you 2 could stand to get acknowledged. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce somebody who you now know is the co-founder of Seacology, the vice chairman of Seacology. He is not only the funder of the Seacology Prize, but he's the funder of this event. Seacology would not be what it is without him, so I'm really honored and pleased to introduce Ken Murdoch.
Wow, thanks. It was so interesting listening to the report of Dwayne and to revisit the history with Paul of our first beginnings, and actually the unexpected opportunity and challenge that Paul faced of saving that rainforest, and where it turned out to be, in the end, because Seacology had not been formed, really the genesis of Seacology. So thank you, Paul. And I'd like to re-echo for Dwayne the thank you to the staff and all the wonderful people and all of our regional representatives throughout the world that bring us all these projects and in this case nominated tonight's recipient of the Seacology Prize. So thank you to all of them. There's 20 some people. I don't remember the exact count. So I'd like to proceed with the really important part of the evening and welcome you to the 23rd Annual Seacology Prize. The award is awarded each year to Indigenous Islander from somewhere in the world who has had an exceptional achievement in preserving the environment and culture from one of the 100,000 plus islands. The Seacology Prize was first established 22 years ago when we first honored Chief Ulu of Tafua Village, Samoa. Chief Ulu courageously honored a pledge made on his father's deathbed to protect the village's ancestral rainforest. He resisted the overtures of loggers for more than a decade, despite the village's pressing need for money. Chief Ulu also stood for the rights of Tafua villagers to make their own decisions and control their own destinies. We have now previously honored 22 heroic individuals from throughout the world for their passion, persistence, courage, and vision in safeguarding the remarkable environments of the world's islands. From a champion of alternative energy for remote villages in Malaysia, to a protector of ancient beech forest in Japan, to the creator of Madagascar's first private forest reserve. These brave indigenous leaders have risked their own lives and well-being to protect their islands, their ecosystems, and cultures. I personally have had a long-standing interest in the world's islands and am pleased to underwrite the Seacology Prize in memory of my mother, Lollavie Fish Murdoch. Tonight, Seacology is pleased to announce that the Professor Ali Shaibu Shekue has been selected to receive the 2014 Seacology Prize. For his efforts and work to organize fishing communities and create marine protected areas in his home country of Kenya over decades of his life. Now please sit back and enjoy a short video introducing us to the professor and his work.
Unaweza usiku ukiamka saa 9 usiku, basi unanyanyuka na kufunga. Ilikuwa hatuna suruali kipindi hicho, kwa suruali ilikuwa ni shuka alafu na fulana, kwa sababu ilikuwa haijatokea mambo ya utalii, ilikuwa haijatokea mambo ya kwenda Warabuni kufanya kazi, ilikuwa haijatokea mambo ya kwenda Canada wala kupotea Amerika. Au kufikiria kwamba ghafla mambo yatabadilika, nyumba kama hii bila kuwa na milioni 10 ndio unapata. Because sipendi kujitema stress. Ukitema stress unazeeka haraka. Wajibu wako wewe ni ufanye, lakini usipokuwa kama mimi ninaomba basi nitapewa povu ama magonjwa. Kwa kuwa na sehemu moja ya uhifadhi wa mazingira, kuhifadhi matumbawe na sehemu ya mazalio ya samaki, na naomba watu wasini Mungu muweze kuendelea na uhifadhi kama huu. Asante.
Na hatutaki kama uvuvi mbaya kuharibu mazingira.
Katika maoni yako, wakubali hivi sehemu shirikishi au vitengo vya kuweza kuhifadhi
kulingana na wavuvi basi athirike.
Kweli mimi nilikuwa ni mtu mmoja sitaki kusikia kitu hifadhi. Manake baada ya 68 kuingia Marine National Park, tukaona ule unyanyasaji wake kwa wavuvi, nikawa nimechukia sana kusikia neno hifadhi. Baada ya kuwa mtundu zaidi, sitaki kusikia tuna, sitaki kusikia uhifadhi, sitaki kusikia. Nikutana na watu wawili walinibadilisha fikra sana. Sasa kawa nachunguza zaidi ninapozamia. Sasa nilipoanza kuyatia kwenye akili yale matumbawe, ndio nikaona faida gani kumbe yale matumbawe yanafaa kuhifadhiwa. Nichukue nafasi ya kusoma vitabu vya uhifadhi kwa lugha tofauti za Kiswahili niweze kujua hifadhi. Kisha nikawa niko ndani ya bahari kuangalia bahari vile iko, athari gani.
Naona kwanza ni elimu. Sababu wajua sisi kama wavuvi, elimu zetu
tumetenga pale kuhifadhi, lengo ni kwa jamii. Basi sote tumekubaliana kwa sauti moja, lengo ni kwa jamii. Once. 2, baada ya kushakubaliana, kisha tupate elimu ya kuweza kuhifadhi ile sehemu. Tutahifadhi kivipi? Kwa taratibu gani, ili tuweze kupata faida gani, ikiwa kwa robo mwaka, nusu mwaka ama kwa mwaka. Ile faida itakapokutoka kwa mwaka, kurudiwe pale pale kulipokubaliana kwa sauti moja kwa pamoja, kuwe na uwazi sasa. Nafikiri kumezungumzwa kitu usimamizi shirikishi. Mamangu akifagia uwanja wote na ule pale akifagia uwanja wote, kishtukia mji mzima umekuwa safi. Kila asubuhi wazee wakifagia, walikuwa na karara la mnazi ndio akifagilia mji mzima bila kuwepo. Wako nao vizuri, maji yanatumia ya mvua mpaka sasa. Tutoe nafasi mbili, nafasi ya mazingira kwanza kipaumbele natural, kisha tuangalie nafasi ya poti. Hali ya mazingira ya Lamu ni nzuri kuliko ni kokote Kenya. Bado hayajachafuka kama tunavyofikiria mazingira kwingine kuchafuka. Na bila shaka mimi naona yatakwenda kuwa mazuri zaidi kwa sababu watu wameanza kufahamu mazingira ni nini na faida ya mazingira ni nini. Lakini tuna shaka kubadilika kwa mazingira sehemu fulani.
It was very hard for me to put 5-6 community under one common ground of conservation. A friend of mine told me that there is somebody known as Professor Shekue, Ali Shaib Shekue. When you get that man is really indispensable if you want to succeed in your vision and missions. Fortunately, I managed to meet Professor Shekue, told him that this is what we need to do. But it's very hard. Say, no problem. We are going to build up the synergy and we'll make this very successful. There we started what is known as the community conservation area for Iweni.
Mandhari yangu ya kuona mbali baada ya miaka 10, hata ni mbali miaka 10, nasema baada ya miaka 5 tu, watakuwa na mabadiliko na samaki wataongezeka zaidi na hali itakuwa mzuri na watu watakuwa na fikira moja wote kwa lengo moja. Nguvu wakati huu sasa kidogo anza kusikika kidogo, lakini ilikuwa nguvu ya tambuliki na mpaka dakika hii imefikia katika ile robo.
For outstanding island environmental achievement, the 2014 Seacology Prize is awarded to Professor Ali Shaibu Shekue of Kenya.
We'd like to now invite all of the board members that are present tonight to join us in awarding the award to the professor. Okay, would you please join us, Professor?
We're also going to present the professor with a check for $10,000. Given the market today, we suggest it be cashed quickly. Professor Shekue has agreed to grace us with some comments, so please, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum. Tasema habari zenu. Sema mzuri sana.
How are you? So essentially you're supposed to answer back and say, I'm doing fine.
Mabibi na mabwana.
Ladies and gentlemen,
pokeeni salamu zetu
accept our warm greetings
kutoka kwa watu wa Lamu ndani ya Kenya.
From the people of Lamu in Kenya.
Ni heshima kubwa sana kuwa hapa leo mbele yenu.
I'm most honored to be here in your presence today.
Siku ya leo sikujua kuwa nitaweza kutoka kwetu na mimi mvuvi mdogo niwe nitaungana na nyinyi hapa leo.
As an artisanal fisherman, I've never thought or dreamt of a day as this.
Hii ni wazi kuwa Seacology haina mipaka, haiangalii elimu ya mtu, haiangalii umri wake, na haina kabila wala dini.
This is evidence that Seacology has no boundaries, does not consider one's level of education, does not consider one's age, and does not look at one's tribe or religion.
Nina furaha isiyokuwa na kifani kuwa hapa leo mbele yenu kwa sura moja, na sote kuwa na furaha moja kwa nyoyo zilizokubaliana.
I am overjoyed by being here in front of you all to be honored.
Nashukuru Seacology kwa juhudi zao za uhifadhi wa mazingira wa bahari ya Kenya na ulimwengu mzima.
I thank Seacology for its effort to conserve the marine resources in Kenya and all over the world.
Nashukuru Seacology kwa kutambua elimu ya jadi ambayo iko na watu ambao hawakusoma na kutumia elimu hii kuhifadhi mazingira ya bahari.
I also thank Seacology for its respect and recognition of indigenous knowledge that exists with the local communities who are mostly uneducated, and for its keenness to utilize this knowledge to enhance conservation.
Nashukuru Seacology kutambua na kutukubali na kutuongoza, na leo kutuzawadia kwa juhudi zetu na zao.
I thank Seacology for recognizing us, guiding us, accepting us, and now awarding us for our efforts and determination.
Hii zawadi itahamasisha vijana katika uhifadhi wa mazingira kwa ajili ya vizazi vyote vijavyo.
This award will encourage the youth to participate in conservation, effort and practices for the benefits of all future generations.
Nashukuru kamati ya Seacology kwa kazi mzuri wanaoifanya kati ya dunia mzima.
I thank the board and members of Seacology for the excellent work that is being done to this world.
Sherehe hii mtaona ni ndogo, lakini itakuwa moyoni, maishani mwetu.
This event may seem small, but it will remain in our minds and hearts for the rest of our lives.
Moyo wangu umejaa furaha na macho yamejaa machozi. Nasema tu asanteni, asanteni, asanteni. Mwenyezi Mungu awabariki nyote.
My heart is full of joy and my eyes are full of tears. I can only say thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you all.
Professor Shikue, I'm sure that the warmth of our applause lets you know also what is in our hearts. We're so proud. We're so proud to associate with you and so grateful that you came clear to our country to be honored. We invite you to visit with the professor. Thank you so much for your support of this important event. Thank you and have a good evening.